goes he?
Early summer 2018, and as you can see, they're digging a whacking grey hole on a site which until recently stood the derelict remains of a Sea Cadet Centre. And as a point of local interest, tragedy struck here in June 2014 whilst we were all sleeping, when two teenagers set the place ablaze, unaware a young homeless man was asleep in its basement. He unfortunately died of smoke inhalation before help reached him. Though fast forwarding to winter 2018, we can see we're to be getting an influx of new folk into the neighbourhood. This being something we can document, as we can Croydon's rapidly changing skyline too. Yeah, I've been thinking as well that we should bring some of the local natives in on things, enlighten them somewhat, and then get their take on all this malarkey. Any road up, let's not overlook the local wildlife either. For now, hey. As still being very much a country boy at heart, it's the local park outside my front door I generally head for. And was to get a nice surprise in going for a stroll recently, prior to hitting the road and braking for the border, that is. As you can see, migrating geese, having stopped off to refuel prior to making their long journey to warmer climes. Rather apt, one thought, given I'm to be flying off today as well, though I'll of course be filling up at a motorway service station. Right, okay. Now we're going to leave you largely in silence for a time to enjoy watching these big birds. They're what I read are what's left of the dinosaurs. They're fascinating to watch and were to walk with up close. So take a chill pill and enjoy for a while, as we've a stark message to deliver once you have. As yes, there is a further point of this wee exercise, and you doing so will help make it. Just birds, right? Albeit them rather majestic ones, and simply feeding on what nature provides. Though for some time this often hasn't been the case. There are things going on in your world, people. Things everybody needs to become aware of. And damn quickly. Just give it a mo, and then you'll know. Dogs. So what's this stark message, I hear you thinking? What's with the geese, eh? Well, take this in, and then I'll fill you in. This was shot in 2016.
Yeah, I'm picking it up somewhat here. It's like spiders' webs all over the grass, and you can't see them unless the sun's shining on that particular area, that is. And yeah, I'll be fascinated to learn what causes this, or what does this.
Clearly what I'm getting at is that this stuff's on the grass, and the geese were eating the grass. But the kicker in all of this is what this stuff is. What I went on to find out it is after a few internet searches. Yes, people from completely different parts of the world picking up on the same thing. Some chap, by the sounds of it, out with his son here, getting some close-ups.
Whoa, there's tons of them, Dad!
You can see these chem webs. They're all, this is not from spiders. This is chem webs, filaments, nanofilaments, whatever you want to call them. They're on everything. They're in the trees. They're in the grass. They're on you. They're in me. I breathe in this stuff, so I'm this stuff. It actually grows. I just raked up a bunch of stuff, and literally in minutes, it was all attached to it. And you don't know it unless you catch it in the sunlight. With the sun in front of you in a certain angle, then you can see it. I do not know how it's going to show up on this video, but if you look, you'll see it. You'll see it. Look closely. That stuff glittering, that's chem webs. It falls from the sky. It's been sprayed out of planes. It's floated in here. It's part of whatever they're doing. I don't know if it's part of their reflecting light, making plasma, if it's something weaponized, more gallons. I don't know. It's just a bunch of things together. It's part of something. See them? This is not from spiders. There are spiders, but they're not doing this. Okay, I swear to God, they're not. See that? That's chem webs, filaments, or plasma webs, whatever, but that's it. This is the pale blue sky we got. It used to be so dark blue. It was incredible. When you go to the river, everything was blue, blue, blue. The sky was totally dark blue. The water was totally dark blue. Just everything was blue. The world was blue. Now it's pale blue. It is a pale, light blue color because of the haze and the chem particles and nanoparticulates and the spray they've done literally for years at this point. Here's this lichen or this mess growing in my trees here that the branches just drop off dead. It's hard to see it, but look, I've been watching this stuff for a couple of years. Yep, still here, still alive, but yeah, holding on. That my poor old trees.
Well, we've got some lovely summer weather back here in Wexford, and it's been lovely for the last few days. Yesterday we had a lovely blue sky, and wasn't any chemtrails until yesterday evening, sunset, and then last night the moonlight was plastered. The moon was plastered by chemtrails, absolutely insane chemtrailing. But today, no blue sky up there. Well, it's blue, but it's been hammered by chemtrails. And everything, all of that shit you see up there was sprayed there deliberately by today's commercial air traffic. And look at the sun, obscured by all the chemical crap. And see to the right of the sun, the chembo, as they're known, the light hitting the chemical medium and refracting. And there was another one over here to the left of it a minute ago, but just crazy, folks, crazy, absolutely. Not one natural cloud formation up there. Everything we see has been put there by commercial air traffic. Unbelievable. Spraying away there as we speak. And lots of on and off spraying today. Starting in one point, stopping in the other. And different types of trails, different chemicals. Trails reacting differently, some with bobbles, some wider than others, some longer than others, some shorter than others. And yeah, just crazy. Insane that we put up with this, folks. The big elephant in the room that everybody needs to start talking about. And I can tell you again, I was out this weekend speaking to a lot of people out in the pub. People that really understand that we are being sprayed. People that really never believed it was going on. And again, people that you say to me, oh, you're crazy, man, you're crazy. Well, now they don't think I'm crazy. They know it's all real. But anyhow, but they're going like, so what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Well, half the battle is waking up to it, folks. Half the battle is knowing what's going on, knowing that we are being sprayed, and knowing that this shit is causing air pollution, which is now the biggest killer on the planet, biggest cause of death, air pollution. Knowing that this is what's causing Alzheimer's, and this is what's causing COPD, and this is what's causing asthma and so many other respiratory disorders and neurological disorders. Just absolutely insane, crazy stuff. Just all of these anomalies, these crazy anomalies that we didn't see in the not too distant past, but all now salient parts of the sky landscape, unfortunately, because this is the price of ignorance. And until enough people wake up and expose what's going on and stop talking and start talking about this, nothing's going to change. Well, this is about 10 minutes later, folks, and look what is shrouding the landscape. I have just noticed here under the glistening sunlight. Look, we got all of these nanofibers everywhere. Whoa! Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful spots. Yeah, look at that. Everywhere. Not spider webs. I've had these things tested before by Clifford Carnicom, the Carnicom Institute in America, and he concluded that they were synthetic biology of a very complex nature, And this is what the climate engineers spoke about, folks, at one of the climate engineering conferences that I attended in Berlin in 2014. They spoke about spraying substances, nanotechnology, into the atmosphere, not only to engineer the climate, but engineer humans. And this is what we're seeing. This is what's coming down, folks. This is what's coming down. The crazy people in control, folks. They want to introduce a third strand of DNA. They want to engineer humans on record, not conspiracy theory. This is what they want to do. They want to merge us with machine. They're already putting nanotechnology in all our food. Every food has got nanotechnology in it. Crazy stuff. Re-engineering all of God's creations in their psychopathic image. Re-engineering the weather, re-engineering humans, re-engineering life. And look at these fibres are all over Bear. Look at, just stay still there for a sec, Bear. Look, everywhere. Anyhow, it's time to wake up, folks. It's time to wake up. Crazy times, and only an informed population can stop these psychos.
Whoa. Now, having taken that in, I'm sure where most of you are at is, here. So it's not just the geese, no. And this has happened. It's not merely happening. The oceans aren't exempt, meaning when you eat a fish, you're munching on nanotech. It's in the food chain. It's in art. It's in everything. This is the price of ignorance, indeed. And is there a way out of this darkness? Currently, I'd say no, they're just too advanced. But given what's at stake, I'd also say we'd better try find one, hey? And there are many that are trying. And there are some shining lights too. One of whom we're about to introduce to you, well, shortly anyway. A certain Dr. Katherine Horton. Targeted individual, and absolutely the top girl in our book. Think your families and get involved, or live to regret not doing so when your children grow and ask you why you didn't. You know, it's not just that things aren't working quite right. They're wrong, full stop. And the only thing that can change this is the vast majority, which is us, the general populace. And via exposure, we've got to force our politicians into answering questions on all this. Then maybe, just maybe, we can then live our lives as we should be, as sovereign beings, born free and that remain such. Beyond my stroll in the park with the geese there, I chucked my bags and the dogs in the car and headed for them there hills, over the low English borderlands and on into the magical realm of Wales. And man, did the weather take a turn. Incredibly wild over the high ground it was, but once we'd safely landed, all became calm once more. As if by design it was, like we'd travelled through some sort of vortex and wound up in a different space and time. Quite the white knuckle ride it had been. But now it was time to reflect on the year shortly to pass. 2018, that is. Where we go from here, and not least, why we're out here in the wilderness too. Once we'd hit the trail again and were heading across country to our rendezvous with another TI, on looking back at the hills we'd crossed during the storm the previous night, it was now clear to see why it had been so hair-raising on the narrow, unlit winding roads in high winds. Driving rain and therefore minimal visibility. Practically bog all there was. Bog all. And with sheer drops to our sides at times. And you know, I'm dang sure the sat-nav takes the pee on purpose, I am. Just to give its AI master a giggle at my expense, perhaps. Yes, this is Wales, and I've not been back here since my childhood, so I'm looking forward to some sightseeing. And as we travel, we're going to be explaining certain things as we show you around too. Next stop though, Llanidloes, a small town nestling in the valleys out here, in what are ancient Celtic lands. Having reached our rendezvous point, ye olde town hall on the high street, we parked up and went for a look around. First stop, the River Severn. Llanidloes being the first town on this, as it is the gateway to the Cambrian Mountains of Mid Wales too. Though my doggies being notoriously badly behaved, I thought it prudent we should head out of town and have them stretch their legs in the open countryside rather than risk them causing mayhem immediately on arrival. Being two flat rats hailing from South London, they were somewhat tentative when initially confronted with such wide open spaces, but they soon adapted to the new environment. Yeah, they'd been cooped up in the back of the car for hours, so what better given that than a good run around? And to emphasise the point, was to get a nod of approval from little D here. But yep, they were soon munching on grass stroke nanotech too. Then more running around. And with no real need to pick up the dog bob either. Not out here. Though on encountering the sounds emanating from a cowshed we stumbled across, they were left somewhat perplexed and bravely decided we should go no further. So with the light fading, we headed back into town for some grub and me a few beers, of course. This isn't Llanidloes, it's a shot I took on a future visit to Elan Valley, which is where I also shot the opening scenes, as we were to be based in Lanny for the best part of 2 weeks and explored other areas on day trips. And were not to be featuring the other TIs I hooked up with either, for reasons I'll perhaps cover in part 2 of this what is to be mini-series. Because yes, originally it was intended this be another TI television road trip. Though once more, I'll elaborate on this further on down the road, as elements you see of both the trip, other goings on at the time and beyond it, proved to be quite disturbing. So here and now, we'll interject at this point and introduce proper like Dr. Katherine Horton to yourselves and the channel. Here she is.
Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. I'm making a short set of videos about the crimes that are being committed against me and other victims by the intelligence agencies. And what I thought I'll do for that is I'll split my testimony into several separate videos, so you can select which of the videos you would like to watch, what information you'd like to access. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to make my statement under oath. And the idea is that if you're a victim and would like to use an expert testimony or the testimony of another victim in court, you should be able to use these videos. So I'm using the English oath as it conforms with the Oath Act 1978. And this should be recognized, it's recognized by the English courts, so the idea is that other courts should also recognize it. And so my sworn testimony I can be bound by, and it's to the best of my knowledge. what I'm going to use is the witness affirmation. There are two versions of the oath. One of them is the religious oath in the UK courts, but you can also use the neutral witness affirmation if you're an atheist or you just want to have the neutral oath. The two are exactly identical. One is not better or stronger than the other. You're equally bound to say the truth, in a court of law under both. So I'm using the witness affirmation. You can Google that, as prescribed by the Oath Act 1978, which is still binding in the UK courts. So I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yet officially, complaints about electronic harassment, gang stalking, and surreptitiously implanted technology are met with complete and systematic denial by the authorities. She was just mentioned actually while we were discussing out there, and she's not in my presentation, but please, anyone who's taking notes, check out this lady on YouTube, a Dr. Katherine Horton. She's a high-energy physicist, and just like myself, is being targeted remotely with directed energy weapons, we call them. But she's exceptionally well educated. She used to work at CERN, for instance, and I believe she's an Oxford Fellow. And she is putting out video after video after video, like I am, appealing for people to wake up, really, to support people like her, and help us do something about bringing this to bear. And as you'll learn, it really does, and is going to affect each and every one of us.
So as I said, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. I was born in Transylvania, which is part of Romania. My parents are ethnic Hungarians and Germans. In the mid-1980s, we fled communist Romania to Germany. I completed my entire school career in Germany, and I skipped year 9 on merit, came top of my year, which allowed me to go to Oxford to study physics. So between the years 2000 and 2004, I was at Hertford College in Oxford. I finished with a first-class Masters of Physics. After that, I did a PhD. In Oxford, the name for it is DPhil, but it's exactly the same. And my PhD was in experimental high-energy physics. After that, I became a fellow, a research fellow at St. John's College, Oxford. And I was there between the years 2008 and 2012. And part of my research was, for example, at CERN, but I also worked at the German accelerator laboratory DAISY in Hamburg, which is the German electron synchrotron. So I'm a high-energy physicist. But before I proceed, I would like you to give you proof that I really was a fellow at St. John's College, Oxford. I'm not just saying it. Remember, it's also under oath. But now you also have a written confirmation of this. And when you become a fellow at Oxford, what most people don't know is that you don't actually get a work contract. It's still the old boys network, probably just a tip on the shoulder at some point, and you just turned up. And it's very much kept like that. Of course, the entrance requirements these days, if you become a research fellow, have completely changed. So hundreds of people applied, and eventually I was selected by a panel. But you still don't have a work contract. So the only thing you get is if you request it, and only if you request it, a letter, a confirmation letter by the college office that you indeed were or are a fellow at that college. So what I will show you now is this precise confirmation that I requested before I left Oxford, just so that I can prove, later on that I really was there. It was completed, or it was actually given to me on 9th of August 2012 by Joy Axtell, who was the college office, head of the college office. She was the college office administrator. That's her official title. And what I did, so this is a copy of the original letter, and I'm showing you a copy because I blacked out my date of birth, and that's because it's still used by banks and other places as a password and things like that. So I don't really want to make that public, but I'll show you this letter. So this is what it looks like. That's St. John's College, Oxford here. That's their contact details should you want to confirm this with them. And this is the date, 9th of August 2012. So you can see that was about 2 months before I left at the end of term in 2012. So Oxford has 3 academic terms. And it says, this is to certify that Dr. Katherine Horton, date of birth, scrubbed out by me. Here. Hang on. Maybe you can see it better like that, with the paper behind, is employed as a full-time junior research fellow in physics at St. John's College, Oxford University. St. John's College, University of Oxford for the period, can you read that? 1st of October 2008 to 30th September 2012. Stamped St. John's College, signed Joy Axtell. Okay, so you can call St. John's College and confirm that indeed I was a fellow there. And there's this, you know how we've got this rivalry between Oxford and Cambridge. And essentially, if you're at Cambridge, then they don't have junior research fellows, they just have research fellows. And if you're at Oxford, they make a distinction between did the college pay you or did an external grant body fund you. And if it's the college, if it's actually a college fellowship, you're a junior research fellow. And if the funding came externally, you're a senior research fellow. And, you know, traditionally there used to be just differences in seniority, but these days really not always. But anyway, so if you're from Cambridge, you will recognize this as the research fellowship. And the people from Oxford always have a chip on their shoulder, and some people wanted to change so that we also, you know, so my full title was Junior Research Fellow at St. John's College. So, there we are. After that, so during that time, I worked at in high energy physics. After that, I did a brief project in medical physics, and then I changed to study the physics of human systems, and that's what I did for a very long time, on and off. So when I was at St. John's College, I did that for the entire last year of my fellowship, and after the end of my fellowship in 2012, I moved to Germany, where I joined my husband, who was a researcher there, and I tried to start to bootstrap a startup. And this was intended to help people get back into work, especially if it was foreigners coming into the country and not having any connections, or maybe having a different level of education, or their education certificates not being recognized. And I wanted to build a platform where these people could be integrated really quickly into the employment market, and maybe even create new jobs through that. Unfortunately, at that time, I was already being harassed, and this entire endeavor was sabotaged, systematically sabotaged. I mean, to the point where, I couldn't really continue pursuing that, especially when it's a startup and you're in a country where you haven't, I grew up in Germany, but I didn't have any business contacts there. If you're under the sort of harassment I was under, this sort of task becomes essentially impossible. So I tried for about 2 years to actually do that, and in the end I just realized I have to give up. So I think when did I start? Well, I started, as soon as I left at the in autumn 2012, I spent a couple of months actually drawing up what I really want to do in detail. And then we moved to Munich, and that's where I really launched this thing, or launched the effort. So we were there, starting in spring 2013, and I was working on this pretty much until the entirety of 2013 and 2014. And then at the end of 2014, I realized I just have to give up this endeavor. It's just impossible. And what I did then after that is that I worked in wealth management briefly. I was very interested, so I got into the physics of human systems first, and then I started this startup endeavor, trying to use my insights from systems analysis, and trying to map out how the labor market is going to develop. And then when I couldn't do that, I went back to systems analysis, and I got interested in currencies and what is happening with currencies. And then I went to a wealth management firm that was actually specializing in gold and trying to give people, so companies and so on, extra stability, so actual wealth management by investing in gold. So, you know, actual really core base, you know, emergency backup for pension funds and for companies. So I was there very, very briefly, because after that I realized that what I really wanted to do is actually work with complex systems and think about how to improve them. So with complex systems I mean anything, companies, big institutions. They are run these days according to principles that are still, but they are very intuitive, but they are not always very efficient. So what I did then, after that, is that I went back into studying systems analysis specifically for complex human systems. It was basically my private research project. And then we moved to Switzerland, and when we're here, I launched a consultancy for essentially systems analysis, or the analysis of complex human systems. And again, I was sabotaged, and then I started being assaulted in January 2016. And since January 2016, it has essentially become impossible to do my work because I'm being assaulted hourly. So this is why I went to the court. I've desperately trying to have this stopped. It's ongoing. In fact, the attacks on me are getting ever more insane. But I will leave that to a separate video, so you can get the details of the abuse separately.
There will be more from Dr. Horton in the next episode, and also future-wise on TI television too. And talking of which, on this trip, I even got to watch some of our videos on a big screen television as opposed to just on my laptop. And those of you who are aware of our sister channel TI television will also likely then be aware of Pieter Huilenbroek, a fellow TI from Belgium who's featured now on a few occasions. So prior to wrapping up this episode, we just had to show you pictures of his car, which recently he had converted into an advertising hoarding for a prominent American targeted individual pressure group, one called freedomfortargetedindividuals.org. Here's one of their billboards on the M25 in London. And now, very much for the record, on Pieter's car in Belgium. Brilliant, Pieter. Absolutely brilliant, mate. Well done. Well done. So do please keep a lookout for part 2 of Break for the Border. Or even better, subscribe. Then you won't have to. when there'll be more from us TIs, more of Wales, and of the people of Llanidloes, whose veterans, service personnel, elders and younger generations with it, turn out en masse on Remembrance Sunday in honour of and to pay their respects to their fallen kinfolk.